Hi, I'm Mark Victor Hansen, co-author and creator of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series and the 1 Minute Millionaire series, The Enlightened Way to Wealth. You're watching my friend Philippe Matthews' show. Don't miss it.
In 1997, history was made when the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad was co-authored by Robert Kiyosaki and Sharon Lechter. Still making history and still authoring books, Robert sat down with me during a recent trip to Chicago to discuss his passion for educating people on building wealth and, more importantly, sustaining wealth. This and more is up next on The Philippe Matthews Show. Welcome to the Philippe Matthews Show. I'm sitting here with an actual legend. I'm sitting here with Robert Kiyosaki, the man who produced a publishing phenomenon and a wealth-building phenomenon called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Robert, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you.
1997, here is this concept, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You're getting advice from your poor dad, and you're getting advice from this kind of surrogate father who is very wealthy. Did you ever see this coming? Where you're selling out Madison Square Garden, I mean, everywhere you go, you're kind of rushed like, Michael Jackson. Well, I guess that's not necessarily a good thing. But you get the idea. Were you prepared for this level of success?
No, I don't. No, I just feel extremely lucky and blessed, and but it's also, spiritual. I don't have to work anymore. I mean, if I made no more money, I'd be fine for the rest of my life. And sometimes I wonder why I do this, why do I keep going? But there really is some kind of a drive and a mission. Like I said, I feel blessed, I feel lucky, and I'm just grateful for all the wonderful things that have happened.
Yes, yes. Now, I heard that a phenomenon occurred that has never happened in the publishing industry ever before. I believe it came from Warner Brothers, who publishes your books. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, well, it's been on the New York Times bestsellers list since the arrival of it in 1997, so it's never left. But the phenomenon is, it went back to #1.
That's correct.
That's nuts.
I know.
That's insane. How does that happen? You're reaching, obviously, an entire new flock of people for it to come back to #1. My God.
And after 7 years, it's been on there 3 weeks now.
Yeah.
And that is unheard of. And it just shows the power of, I guess, viral marketing, or people telling their friends, because it's sure not my marketing.
Right. Let's get into some meat and potatoes here. Why are you so passionate about this message of self-wealth?
I guess it goes back a long ways. I was always kind of interested in money as a kid, but in my family, it was a taboo. In our family, we're all educators, we're all PhDs, we're MBAs, and all that other stuff. We're professional people. And to speak about money was dirty. It was a sin. And I went along, and I graduated from school. I went to school in New York. Graduated from Hawaii, I went to school in New York, and then I had a high-paying job. So I've always been able to make money, but something always didn't satisfy me with just money. And then the Vietnam War was on in 1969, and I quit my high-paying job with Standard Oil of California. I was driving tankers for them as a ship's officer. And I quit that job to go join the Marine Corps. So I went from making $5,000 a month down to, I think, $200 a month.
Oh, wow.
That football player, Pat Tillman, he was just killed in Afghanistan.
Yes.
It's that same, when I read his story in Time magazine, that same story. It's a sense of duty.
Yeah. It's
a sense of obligation. It's a sense of responsibility.
Yes.
So and I was draft exempt because I was sailing on oil ships, the Bush Brothers oil ships, I say. As long as you drive in oil, you don't have to go to war.
You're fine.
Yeah, you're fine, man. You can get draft exempt.
Safe.
You write your own ticket. As long as it's with oil, you're okay.
You're bad.
Yeah.
Welcome to free TV.
I know. Don't hang me now.
No.
So anyway, and so I volunteered, and my dad just cried, my poor dad, my school teacher dad, because I was a horrible student in school. And I finally I get the high-paying job with the big corporation, and I quit, and I go to Vietnam to go fight. And I flew helicopters in Vietnam. I was a Marine pilot. And it was out there I kind of started to grow up because I don't believe most of what I read in the press anymore. And it started in Vietnam when I realized that we were being lied to. Or not so much lied to, we just weren't being told the truth.
All of the,
you know what I mean? They weren't quite lying, they just weren't quite telling the truth.
Right.
And then being an oil man, I realized that in Vietnam, we were fighting for Royal Dutch Shell. We weren't fighting for anything else but oil, because there's a lot of oil out there. The same thing as we're fighting today in Afghanistan and Iraq. It's about the oil. You know, don't ever anybody tell you it's for freedom. It's about oil. And oil is important. Don't get me wrong. I understand. You know, I'm not saying it's bad.
Right.
So I got very disillusioned, and I come back from Vietnam in 1973, and my poor dad, the guy that always told me to go to school, get good grades, and get a high-paying government job, and get my PhDs, I get my GS 25 million rating, or whatever they those government guys go by, you know. Well, he gets fired. And so back in the 70s, my old man's 50 years old, and I'm just 25 at the time. He's fired because he ran for governor against his boss, or lieutenant governor against his boss. And he ran as a Republican in what people call the People's Republic of Hawaii. You know, it is so labor union intense. Nothing wrong with labor unions, you know, but they have their own agenda. So my dad makes the mistake of running against them. And in a democratic state, he gets wiped out. He goes back to his boss, the governor, and says, "Would you give me my job back?" The governor says, "Here, loser, you're gone." So my dad was blacklisted from ever working again in the state of Hawaii. You know, never, because you can't work here. You're a persona non grata. So my dad couldn't find a job, even though he was hardworking, good man, PhD, you know, all the stuff.
Yeah.
He couldn't get a job. So here I'm 25 years old, and I go, obviously that stuff doesn't work. And I could sense these changes coming in the world. You know, like in 1971, Nixon took us off the gold standard. 1974 was the start of these 401ks. And so being an economics major, basically, and a historian, I could see the changes coming. So today we have Social Security is bankrupt. Medicare is going to go first. There's less and less job security. You know, and the government is now allowing big corporations not to fund the pensions of the workers. So back in the 1970s, I could see these changes coming. So that's a long answer of saying I realized that I better learn to take care of myself and not depend upon the government or a big corporation to take care of me. And I could also see that for millions of people of the baby boom generation, my age, we're going to be the first generation that really realizes that Social Security, you know, the Japanese don't call it Social Security, they call it Social Security. You know? Like a little Social Security today, you know. That sucker's gone.
It's
you know?
over.